本场是今年亚洲新闻专业论坛的第一场，由我来帮大家服务。我叫林元辉，是本基金会的董事。本场是很荣幸邀请到4位各国来的资深新闻工作者来分享高见。那容我扼要介绍一下4位贵宾。第一位，我的右手边是日本来的杉田弘毅先生，日本語で杉田弘毅さん。现任日本共同通讯社论说委员，曾经担任共同社科菲兰的支局长、纽约的特派员、华盛顿支局长跟首席的编辑。那采访过美国小布希总统、俄国总统普京等世界领导人。2019年起担任共同社特别编辑委员会的委员兼论说委员，也担任朝日新闻台、朝日新闻主持人，同时也是明治大学政治经济学部的特聘教授。他因为领导日本的同业对国际报道而获得2021年的日本新闻奖。著作包括《验证规则的选择》、美国为何能够改变后全球世代的地缘政治、美国的制裁外交、质疑国际报道等，琳琅满目哦。那接着我介绍韩国来的李基柱先生。在我的右手边，现任韩国 MBC 的记者，2008年担任韩国日报记者，2013年入职这个 MBC， 待过政治部、经济部、社会部、国际部、选举广播企划团、总统办公室出入记者。去年1月，以1号机中可疑的平民特别报道获得2022年韩国广播大赏的新闻记者奖。去年底，他出版《记者遗憾》，讲述作为一个政治记者心理跟对抗强权的斗争，并且对记者变成权力的奴隶不以为然。再来，我要介绍印尼来的华裔迪亚特米卡，各种语言我们学起来很辛苦哈。现任印尼的 Geopolitics 的执行长，华裔先生在2019年印尼大选期间，联合的24家媒体跟印尼的网络媒体协会、独立记者联盟和印尼反诽谤协会等组织，创立了印尼第一个事实查核协作平台 CheckFakta.com。他是印尼独立记者联盟的成员，也是印尼网络协会、媒体网络协会的秘书长。2014年，他获得哈佛大学尼曼奖学金，也在印尼大学跟努桑塔拉州媒体大学教授新闻学。最后，我要介绍我们的同胞赖英先生，他是原举基金会的执行长，也担任台湾民主基金会的董事。他的经历由近而远，是2013年到16年担任台湾智库的副执行长，2006年到2008年他担任民主进步党中国事务部的主任，2007年到2008年担任民进党的国际事务部主任，2003年到2006年担任台湾智库国际事务部主任，2000年到2003年担任台湾驻日经济文化代表处的办公室主任。1999年到2000年，他担任民进党驻美的代表处主任。学历方面，他是 Virginia 理工大学的博士，曾经是美国 Cornell University 的访问学者。那等一下，也就照我刚刚介绍的顺序，我们就要请4位分享他们的高见。每位语坛人分配到的时间是15分钟。来
Thank you very much, Mr. Carter. Thank you, Mr. Su, and thank you for organizing this wonderful say something and office at the beginning.
希望不是这样的话，没有只要分析政策就好。
about the election and politics and the whole media. And actually, it is usual in Japan to have the snap general election. So it's up to the Prime Minister of Japan, Kishida's mind when and how we will have the election. So far, we don't know yet when he will make the decision to have the election. So I will focus today on Japan of God, the trend, and global media, and conversation surrounding. Since the end of the World War II, actually, center-right government have been in power in Japan. So just twice, from 1992 to 1995 and 2009 to 2012, just twice, center-left government took control of the power to govern Japan. Then most of the times, center-left government failed to achieve their promise in the time of gains and liberation. So after, except those two exceptional 5 years central government period, basically we are okay with the center-right government. I think this sounds very unique and maybe strange to you, because in your countries, I know that most of the times left and right parties will take the power alternately. So once the left party is control, and then after that, the right-wing party will take it. But in the case, it's almost always center-right. I will tell you why. The first one is it's still the U.S. factor plays a very, very big role in shaping Japan's political trend. The reasons of the failures of the center-left government, most of the times, were because they didn't have a good relationship with Washington, D.C. Each time center-left government control of the power, the U.S. government gave us some negative signs to us, and saying that the center-left government doesn't know well about the importance or value of the U.S. bases in Japan, like Okinawa or many other places in Japan. And each time the President of the United States met with the Prime Minister of the center-left government, President welcomed the Prime Minister from Japan. But senior officials who briefed us, media people, showed some signs of the negative attitude of the White House, and that kind of thing that made us kind of concerned that what would be the future of the U.S.-Japan, and also that the U.S. would be the ultimate guarantor of the Japan's security. So that made us very, very fearful. Once some big emergency happens, the U.S. may not come to this region to help us or to protect us. I'd like to move to the why. But so far we don't have any populist movement, big populist movement in Japan, from the far right or far left or ultranationalism or whatever. So the Japanese people are mostly conservative, modest, and moderate, and not jump not jumping on the populist trend of the political spectrum. That is a big question for me. Why so? Why so? It's simply maybe the Japanese conservative, basically, and maybe we have bad memories of World War II or something like that. But I think that my conclusion that the big question, which is quite unique, which makes Japan quite unique from other countries, is that first of all, as I said, still the negative legacy of history is so big in Japan. And secondly, center-right government, that the history played a part in a way that once we had the populist government, we moved to that the past sad memory of the war again. Because we know that the World War II or the big defeat of Japan in the War Pacific War and the outcome of the populist movement in Japan, pre-war Japan. And the second one is the center-right government, which is held by the LDP, Liberal Democratic Party, that is current ruling power in Japan, and Mr. Kishida, Prime Minister, is the head of the party, has achieved big growth, economic growth, since they took power after the end of World War II. For the last 75 years, Japan, from the ashes of the World War II, had achieved the big growth, and now it comes to number 4 economy in the world. That once in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was number 2 after the United States. And the third point, that is something interesting, maybe interesting to you, is that because you have the imperial system, monarch system, and that with that kind of the system, somebody said that this is Japan is not a pure 100% clear democracy. We have the system of the king, so that means that we can't say ourselves that full democratic country. We don't elect the president as some of the country here. Does and do, like US people do. So that's the maybe the monarch system is maybe the spiritual grounding for the Japanese people who hesitate to take on or who hesitate to jump in the populist movement far right and far left. And the fourth point, I think it is a very interesting point, is that Japan is an island nation. So insulated from the world affairs or the turmoil, like big wars or revolutions or that kind of thing. So that's why that we can or we could enjoy the peaceful environment since the World War II, unless we ourselves start something stupid, something provocative, like we did in the 30s, 20s, and 40s. So that's my conclusion of why Japan doesn't have the populism so far. But now I'm going to the current situation of Japan. As you know, that we are in kind of getting into the first experience since the World War II that we played some of the interesting role in the geopolitical environment in this region. The new reality is emerging in the region. First one is the fourth rise of China and rivalry or competition of US and Japan. And secondly, North Korea, poor country, but they have the bombs, they have the great nuclear bombs, and the missiles held by Russia. And thirdly, we had President Trump in the United States. He's the symbol of the U.S. Rise of the isolationism, and he once said that we should not protect Japan because Japan doesn't pay much enough to house the U.S. troops in Japan. That's a lie. That's fake news. But he still thinks that way, maybe. Or his people still think that way. So those three factors are now making Japan or pressure Japan to take the new course that is far away from Japan has taken since World War II. That is, we have to have the indigenous military build-up, including some of the strong, robust, lethal weapons, and some of the people, Japan policymakers, we need some nuclear weapons by ourselves, not to be given by the United States. That is a quite new phenomenon in Japan. Well, okay, so lastly, the role of the media in Japan. I recently analyzed the interviews of some of the journalists, which know very well about what kind of role Japanese media played in the World War II. My conclusion is that they simply play the role as the cheerleaders for the government and for the army of Japan in China, or maybe in Taiwan, or in Korea, or other parts of Asia. They were embedded like we are sometimes in the Japanese army, deep into the Chinese mainland, or Indonesia, or maybe India, or some other parts of Asia. And they knew that the Japanese army committed the war crimes and sometimes some atrocities, but they didn't report that at all. So they knew that once they report that kind of thing, that they would be sometimes, in the worst case scenario, they would be arrested, or they will be reprimanded or something they don't like to do, they didn't like to face. So that is their attitude to report the wars or battlefields in Japan. So cheerleaders, that's something very, very warning word for me. And I'm not sure in this critically important or dangerous environment or moment surrounding Japan, can we register to become another cheerleader for the government or army or military or navy? So, if I will tell you some kind of personal episode. Every time I write something negative the Japan policy on the build-up of the military now, I would get called from the government or the army or DOD, and they will say that Sugita-san, do you know the word of one Japan? Japan's in the Japanese are in one boat. And we have the same, we face the same challenges, and we have to act together with the under the instruction or under the hidden instruction of the government and military. That kind of thing that is already happening now in Japan. So that's very tough challenge we are facing now. So my conclusion of this answer of this session is that of course the media is always important. First of all, the facts. That's the most important thing, based on the fact. And secondly, I have to say that I need to get some input from the other side, especially in the security reporting. In the case of Japan, we have to add some have something from the China side, why China does do this, or why North Korea does do this. They know that this is harassing or harming Japan. Why does they do this? Do they have any rational or logic or anything which we can understand or we should understand? That is the second point. And the third point is that, again, this is the very important. That is when the democracy and authoritarian are in the game, I think the media should support the democracy, because media is only can be active under the rule of the democracy, freedom, and human rights and other things. Free media is only survive. Free media can survive in the environment of the democracy. So I'm always Lin introduced me that I'm teaching university in Tokyo, and students asked me frequently that why Japanese media support Ukraine when we report the war in Ukraine. Why don't you report much about the Russian position that Mr. Putin is thinking? And for them that the war happens because both of the parties, Ukraine and Russia, made some mistakes. That's why it will happen. There's no 100% purely correct right for Ukraine and 100% wrong and bad, malicious for Russia. So with that kind of analysis of the world politics, of why Japanese media support Ukraine, and I said, I answered that this is because Ukraine is a democracy. I know that our correspondent in Russia doesn't have the freedom to report what's happening in Russia. So that's the very tough environment of the free media for us. So we have to be sided with the democracy because that's the reason why we applaud why we advocate the free press. Yeah, and right. Okay, I'll stop here, and I'm looking forward to the interaction with other panelists and the Q&A session with the audience. Thank you very much.
好，那我们第二位就请韩国的李希柱先生，李先生先。
Can you hear me? Yeah, I think it's helpful you see my presentation materials in the handbook when I speak. Okay, thank you. I was a normal journalist, just one of them, but my life has changed absolutely. Absolutely changed as I mainly reported on criticism of the government. As a result, now I became a symbolic figure as a victim of press suppression in Korea. I will tell you about various things I've experienced and current post-election political situation in Korea and the reality facing the Korean journalists. Many people say, when I opened my eyes, I found myself in an underdeveloped country. It's the most famous buzzword in Korea these days. Just 2 years, Korea has deteriorated the level in most of all areas: politics, economy, diplomacy, and security, etc. Among them, economic situation is very serious. Even though rising prices are a global phenomenon, Korea is now experiencing recession-type inflation. Korean people became angry because people's living level more and more regressed, not progressed. it made a shocking result of this election. In Korea, the National Assembly general elections was held in last April. This election was a midterm evaluation of the President Yoon Suk-yeol's 2 years. Yoon Suk-yeol is the current leader of the Conservative Party, just close to right wings. As you see, the result was a ruling party's complete defeat. Korean people basically don't like dictatorship because we experienced a very long time the military dictators. So we made just 5 single term in constitution for the president term. So I think so a difficult future is expected for the remaining 3 years of President Yoon Suk-yeol's term. I will tell you three decisive scenes of this election. First scene is Dior-bae, bribery suspicion. 6 months ago in Korea, it was revealed by YouTube investigative media that was President Yoon's wife openly received a Dior-bae from a visitor in her private office. However, the government recently ruled that President's wife receipt of luxury Dior-bae was not a violation of the law. The reason is that she is not a public official. They say she is just a housewife. Can you accept? As you see, the giver sent a message in advance to President's wife, including a picture of Dior-bae and Chanel Cosmetics. And after arranging a time and place with the President's wife, she met him and received the Dior-bae and Chanel Cosmetics. Besides these, there are many other gifts received in the same way. This scene was captured in full on video. So for a while, a suspicion of track coverage arose, but a suspicion of undercover quickly died down, and the President's wife's bribery scandal aroused public anger. And she is also under investigation on the suspicion of stock price manipulation. However, she has not yet been investigated. Her husband, President Yoon, is a former prosecutor general. Dior-bae is the first scene that decided this election result. The second scene was a big wave. Ahead of election, the President Yoon went to the market and he looked at the price tag for green onions. It was a price tag 875 won, Korean won. It was calculating US dollar 0.6. He said, oh, 0.6 US dollar was very reasonable price. I know where, because I visit market frequently. However, we should pay 3 times more and 4 times more than price tag to buy a burden of green onions. But supermarket, the president visit lowered the price by applying various discount events on that day. The people were again outraged, recalling Andersen's fairy tale, Emperor's New Clothes, so-called the Naked King. And the people gathered street holding green onions. The third scene was the so-called fleeing abroad. Last year, summer in Korea, a soldier helping to recover from flood damage drowned due to unreasonable search orders in the water. The death of the soldier worsens public opinions and placed a big burden on the government. Then, external pressure from the President's office and Ministry of National Defense attempt to hide the truth. Ahead of this election, the President appointed the Minister of National Defense as new ambassador to Australia. However, he had already been banned from going out of the country due to connection with the soldier drowning incident. Nevertheless, he was forced to lift ban to on living country. As you see, due to NBC, my company, NBC's persistent coverage, he was caught at the airport in Australia. Eventually, he returned to Korea and resigned Australian ambassador. People who were outraged by the death of a soldier and outraged by this external pressure and outraged the situation of him fleeing abroad. So many people voted against the government in the election. Many people saying the traditional media is declining. But when other media withdraw from soldiers' death issue, NBC is also traditional media, a kind of legacy. It stood up the regime and covered this issue despite various external pressure. President Yoon's catchphrase was fairness and common sense. However, due to his wide bureaucratic bribery and ministers fleeing abroad and suppression of the press, he was faced criticism that he is no longer fair and no longer common sense. Major foreign media have already begun reporting that Korean president was become laid down. Then the president will be subject to strong supervision and checking by majority party, opposition party. The result of this election, ruling party is defeated. President Yoon's authority and power will be weakened, and he will focus diplomacy because it's not necessary to opposition parties have. After this election, President Yoon insisted, my election in running state affair is correct. This means maintaining the policy stance. If so, Korea's collusion with the US and Japan will become stronger, and anti-China and anti-Russian tendencies are expected to increase. And the crisis on the Korean Peninsula will become more serious. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula is becoming more heightened than before. The current government has already annulled the 9.19 inter-Korean military agreement that prohibited mutual military hostilities. Even if Korean government focuses on the diplomacy, it's questionable how strong the foreign policy of Korean government can do. In particular, President Yoon promised he would not tolerate North Korea's weapons being used in Ukraine war. However, actually, North Korea's weapons are being tested in Ukraine as if testing their use against South Korea through Russia. There is a possibility that the friendly relationship between Russia and North Korea beef up. Last Wednesday, Putin and Kim Jong-un agreed to sign a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement in Pyongyang, North Korea. It means providing mutual support if invaded. It seems that two countries have been upgraded to a kind of alliance. There is a concern that North Korea and Russia have declared cooperation in military field. At this point, we also have to consider this man, Trump. If Donald Trump returns to power, Korea's current straightforward diplomacy will face a difficulty. For Trump, even alliances comes in terms of money. Negotiations with Kim Jong-un and Trump are also viewed as a wild card that can be used at any time. That would be a burden for Korea, for Taiwan as well. In recent elections, I think in major countries, strong leaders have either lost or barely won. It shows uncertainty and precarity is increasing further. Taiwan's new president Lai Ching-te urges China to stop its military intimidation and military actions. He is denounced by Beijing as a dangerous separatist. Is right. But he supports maintaining the status quo, as I know, across the Taiwan Strait, and he don't want to stimulate China. I think it's a very realistic and balanced stance, but some conflicts with China will continue for the time being. Taiwan is very similar to Korea. Peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait are essential to world peace and world stability. Peace and stability in Korean Peninsula are also essential to world peace and world stability. The security situation between Taiwan and Korea are very close. Korean people concerned about possibility of US troops in Korea moving to Taiwan in the event of Taiwan war. It falls within US-India-Pacific strategy. It's not something to control by Korea or by Taiwan. Whether Trump is elected or not is a very important value because Taiwan and Korea's security can be threatened at any time. Recently, Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine wars are ongoing. We should think about what we need is related to sustainability and prosperity. We are needed realistic and useful and practical strategy. It can be helpful to avoid any type of war. So I think Korea diplomacy policy is extremely biased toward the US and Japan. It should be revised to inclusive and balanced for Korean peace and for world peace and stability, reflecting the result of this election. Thank you. 多谢。
好，谢谢李先生。那我们接着请Wahyu。
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. It is really a pleasure and an honor for me to be in this distinguished forum. My name is Wahyu Dhyatmika. I'm the CEO of Tempo Digital, but since 1999 I'm a journalist, and my last post in the newsroom was the editor-in-chief of Tempo magazine until 2022, so that's 2 years ago. I will try to follow the good example of my two previous panelists to keep it in 15 minutes, just to trigger some discussion afterwards. I will be giving some brief about Indonesia's election. We had an election in February, 14th of February, just 1 month after the Taiwanese election. And then the second part will try to analyze the state of the election, the state of democracy, the state of freedom of the press during that election. And then in the last part, I'll try to touch the big issue of the geopolitical impact of Indonesia's election. So this is Prabowo Subianto, former Special Force Commander, 3rd Star General, and he won the presidential election in last February. This is his 3rd attempt to be to become Indonesia's president. So he ran in the last 3 elections. He ran first as a presidential candidate in 2009, lost against Joko Widodo, the outgoing president, and then he ran again in 2019, and then lost again. And this time he won, partly because he ran with the outgoing president's son. So his vice president is the outgoing president's son. And I think that's a very political and strategic ploy from Prabowo, because the outgoing president is very, very popular. He's one of the most popular state leaders in the world. His last popularity rating was 80%, even though he only has few months left in office. So he's a very, very popular president. And another feature of this election, we only have direct presidential election since 2004. So this is the 8th president of Indonesia, and the last 4 transfer of power was peaceful. But the earlier 4 transfer was bloody, it was full of violence. So we enjoy democracy since 1998. But we are not pretty sure what will happen under Prabowo's leadership, because he's known to be a very high-tempered person. He was accused of human rights violation. In 1998, he was charged with kidnapping students and pro-democracy activists, and he was dismissed from the military because of that involvement in student kidnappings. So that is the person that will become Indonesia's president, inaugurated in October, so in the next 2 months. So I'm living my life here, very, very fearful of what will happen next. We also have a parliamentary election at the same day. So Indonesia's election is unique because it's the largest single day election in the world. We have 200 voters out of 270 population in Indonesia. So the voters list is around 200 million. 300,000 candidates were vying for 50,000 seats in local and national election. This is Megawati Soekarno Putri, the chairwoman of Indonesia's Nationalist Party, the largest party in Indonesia. And for the 3rd time, her party wins the election, but now with reduced majority. So now they used to have 20% of the vote, but this time they only won 16% of the popular votes. In Indonesia, you might have known that we are not familiar with left-wing political parties or right-wing political parties. We are more, the parties in Indonesia are more differentiated by their affiliation towards nationalists or Islam. So the largest Islamist party is now PKB, that are supported by a very large moderate Islamist organization, the Nahdlatul Ulama. So it's a moderate Islam party, and now they are the largest Islamist party in the parliament, with around 11% of the votes. So in total, there will be 8 political parties in Indonesia's national parliament. So that's the current composition of Indonesian politics. The 3 largest parties are nationalists, so they're more secular party, and out of the 8, 3 parties are based on Islamist values. But in terms of economic policy, social policy, political policies, they are very pragmatic. The current administration, supported by the Nationalist Party, raise tax and also have a lot of public spending. So it's a mix of policies of left and right ideologies. Okay, so let's move on to the state of the election. This is seen as the worst election since the reform era in 1998 because of, I can recall two main factors. The first one was the decision by our highest court, the Constitutional Court of Indonesia, to lower the minimum age for the vice presidential candidate. And that decision, just a few weeks before the registration of candidates, allow the son of the outgoing presidents to register. Because before this decision, the son of the president cannot register, cannot be a candidate, because he's not 40 years old yet, so he's 38. But the Constitutional Court changed the law to allow this to happen and give advantage to Prabowo's camp. And the president then aligned himself with the Prabowo's ticket. And this decision was protested by many in the civil society. There's a lot of protests and outcry from the democracy activists, from campuses about this decision, because it is normal for the Constitutional Court to change regulation, but usually they will defer the implementation to the next election. So they're not interfering with the current ongoing democratic process. So that's the normal system that usually happens in Indonesia. But this time, they said that the decision should be applied immediately and should be applied in this coming election. So people see this as direct intervention from the president. The second factors that also contribute to the fact that this is the worst election in Indonesia's post-reform era is the interference itself. So the president used his executive power to influence local leaders, mayors, governors to support the Prabowo's ticket and increase the spending on social assistance. So every citizen that are below the poverty line in Indonesia, around 20 million households, less than 10% of the whole population receive a social assistance. 600,000 rupiah distributed by the post office nationally a few weeks before the voting day. And it is claimed to be the president's policy. And because the presidents are very popular, and this was given before the election, the voting day, the president's inclination, the president's signals that he supports his son plays a very important role in the decisive victory of Prabowo. He wants 58%, the biggest landslide victory in Indonesia post-reform elections. So it was seen as a very problematic intervention by the president, and it was a big decline of our democracy since 1998. But it was widely discussed. I think that was one of the positive thing about the election, that the press can report all of these wrongdoings, all of these scandals. My magazine, Tempo, week in, week out, reported on these political scandals and got wide attention. And we have a weekly podcast, a new weekly podcast, and it reached over 1 million viewership each episode. So there's a widespread discussion. There's a huge debate around these policies, and we were not in any way silenced, or there's no direct effort to try to censor the press. So I think that's a good positive thing that happened. So this is the last part on the geopolitical impact. As you know, China is the biggest investors in Indonesia now. The chart shows the amount of investment from China since 10 years ago, and you see that it is increasing. Joko Widodo visited China, I think 6 or 7 times during his 10 years presidential term. And Prabowo, even though he's not yet inaugurated as president, already visited China a few weeks ago as president-elect. On the advice of Indonesia's current foreign minister, he visited Japan afterwards. So I think it's a good signal. It shows that Indonesia still wants to keep the balance. Because the invitation came from President Xi Jinping to President-elect Prabowo, but he did decided to include Japan and Malaysia in his itinerary. But increasingly, economically, Indonesians are very dependent to China. There is a huge road and belt project financed by China in Indonesia. Indonesia just also inaugurated the first high-speed train financed by China in Jakarta, Bandung cities. So I think connecting the two cities. So it will increasingly be dependent to Chinese economy because China is the largest economy in the region. But you can see that the picture is taken from the Garuda Shield joint military exercise. It's an exercise by U.S. Army with the Indonesian Army that has been happening since 10 or 15 years ago. So the military cooperation between Indonesia and the US and its allies also is improving. And Prabowo, despite of all of his human rights backgrounds and track records, are trained by the US military. He is a graduate of elite military trainings in the US. The chart shows the influence of China and US on a survey. It is a survey conducted by an agency in Indonesia, and it shows that Chinese influence is growing among Indonesians. There is a huge increase of positive perception about China and a negative perception about the US. Among Indonesia's elites, and I think that will also play some factors in Prabowo's policies moving forward. So what is the direction of Indonesia under Prabowo? I think he has said openly that he wants to keep a strategic balance between China and US. He wants to maintain peace and prosperity in the region. It is going to be increasingly difficult to be neutral and to keep that balanced act in a region like Southeast Asia, where there is growing and competing influence by both countries, by both superpowers. The interesting thing is, in one of his speeches, I think in Shangri-La Security Dialogue in Singapore last month, Prabowo also said that he wants to increase global South roles in global stage. So he said Africa will be one of his main attention as president, and he wants to put more attention to building relationship with African countries. And this is going back to a big conference in Bandung in West Java in 1955, where Indonesian president at the time organized this with several other world leaders, the Asian African Conference, that really start the movement for independence in a lot of post-colonial African countries. And I think Prabowo has this dream to revitalize that alliance between Asia and Africa. But also economically, he cannot escape the need to build the Indonesia's economy. Now it's growing 5% GDP growth annually in the last 5 to 6 years, except the pandemic, of course. But he needs to build the GDP growth to even 7% a year if the Indonesia's vision to become a high-income country in 2045 can be realized. So he will need all of the alliance and agreements and cooperation that he can get to have that vision realized in 2045. So I think that's it as an introduction of Indonesia's politics and election and the impact for the geopolitical region. Thank you.
好，谢谢王佑先生。那再来，我们请这个赖先生。
Thank you, Chair, and also honor for me to be here to present my views. I have to say that just unlike the other three very senior journalists, I'm not a journalist in professions. I'm basically just a simple think tankers work on policy issues. I'm still wondering why I'm here to attend this very prestigious journalism conferences. But still, I'm privileged and thankful for the invitations. So here's the view that I'd like to express. Basically, I'm going to talk about the election in Taiwan, which everyone knows, and also the development right now, as well as geopolitical implications. And I think I'll just give this transparency because just the chairman and in his opening remarks touch upon these issues that the President I-Chung Lai won the election, but the DPP party lost the majority. So that right now, quickly over to the issue about the President I-Chung Lai, his policies. I think that May 20th, when President I-Chung Lai in his opening speech, basically what we could see is that whatever the previous administration by the Taiwan policy toward China will be continued by the President I-Chung Lai, his administrations. He wanted to maintain the status quo. He also wanted to defend democracy and the sovereignty of Taiwan. Also, he expressed his willingness to dialogue with China. And on the domestic front, he liked to build a strong defense. In terms of the foreign policy, the issue about the strong relationship with the United States is a foundation for Taiwan's policy over China. Basically, that is the major difference between the DPP and the KMT. KMT, the major opposition party, actually advocate a more China and the United States to be to take the so-called equal distance between these two, and the Taiwan policy toward China sometimes due to the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait need to take the higher precedence over the United States. So this is the major differences, and the DPP actually advocate that the policy toward the United States and the stronger relationship with the U.S. is a foundation for Taiwan's policy toward China. And then also in the inaugural speech, I think the one of the most important paragraph about Taiwan is that President Lai exhibited very strong self-confidence. And claim Taiwan's position in the world. And basically, if you could see that in comparison with an earlier administration or even the Taiwan presidency from year 2000 onward and all the way to year 2000, probably 2023, the word about how Taiwan to be fearful of being labeled as a troublemaker, that kind of the timid and sentiments no longer exhibit in the President Lai about his inaugural speech. Then the foreign policy direction. That can be summarized as the diplomacy based on volume, the security so that we can maintain peace, and also in terms of the prosperity through the economic and scientific niche that Taiwan has. So in terms of the values, the strong relationship with like-minded partners that have been placed in prominent centers. Security, basically that means that Taiwan needs to construct the balance of power in favor of the democracy in the Western Pacific, specifically across the Taiwan Straits. About the prosperity or the economic side, the issue exhibit in the inaugural speech is that the President Lai and his administration would like to pursue the new cooperation based on the economic and scientific linkage and try to leverage Taiwan's niche in those two areas in order to create new partnerships. And in terms of the defense reform, I'll say that if you look at the personnel arrangement of the administrations, one of the most significant appointment is to have a civilian to be on top of the defense ministries. Although President Taiwan also focused very much on the defense, but the placement of the civilian to be the head of the defense ministry is something that signifies a very different approach by the administrations. And which means that not just about defense issues, not just about the military defense, but also about the national security. So that the civilian taking a very different approach toward the defense will be the main focus. And that actually means a kind of defense reform. It's not just about beefing up the military capabilities. I think if you would like to know the more, probably we could know more about the future directions in the next year, soon to be released, the so-called Quadrilateral Defense Review, which is required by law that after inaugurating, after 10 months of inaugurations, Taiwan Defense Ministry need to come out with this QDR report to map Taiwan's defense directions in the next 4 years, so that by March next year, we probably will see more clearly about how this direction will be. And basically what we could see is that, first of all, in terms of the next 3 to 4 years, the defense, the direction of the defense reform is basically focused on the defense for this island. And then probably later on, it could be extended to the more on the perimeters side. Because that basically corresponds to two kind of different threats. The more recent threat is about the invasion, but another threat that's also very important to Taiwan to manage is about the aggressive operation placed by China. And of course, before Lai being elected, China already labeled the Lai Ching-te and Xiao, this pair, as a so-called independent square, because they label Lai Ching-te as an independent, independent advocates, and they placed the twice on the sanction against the Vice President Xiao Liqin, so that according to the Chinese press, they labeled the Lai and Xiao, this pair, even before the election, as an independent square. And of course, when the Lai and Xiao won the election, presidential elections, but since the DPP lose the majority in the Congress, to a certain extent, China took the comfort in terms of how the DPP losing the majority. And in terms of the Chinese actions, right after the electoral victory and all the way until now, we see the continuous Chinese intimidation and coercion against Taiwan. They took out the Nauru, one of Taiwan's remaining diplomatic allies, 2 days after the electoral victory, and the enactment of the very troublesome M503 routes, which is the flight routes that just ride very close to the middle of the Taiwan Straits. And they also have enacted these 3 by routes, which fly from the west to the east and add up to the security concern for Taiwan significantly. And also the Chinese Coast Guard ships started to enter, first of all, about the Taiwan offshore islands territorial waters, and there are also some trying to breach into Taiwan 24-mile zones in the earlier May 23rd and 24th military exercise against Taiwan. And we do see that right now the Chinese military intimidation against Taiwan, in addition to the traditional vessels and the airplane, now the Coast Guard started to play a more significant role, as we see right now. And even yesterday and today, well, the day before yesterday and yesterday, we also see some newer action by China on Taiwan in terms of how the military harassment that is waged against Taiwan right now. So those are the things, and if we look at the domestic front, what we observe is that the KMT TPP, the 2 opposition party, already joined forces in the legislative yuan to boycott the TPP government, and they already proposed some of very controversial legislations to enhance legislative power over the executive branch, in our view, and also the opposition-dominated LOI. It seems to be on the course to probably they want to do some amendment about the national security legislations, and also work on several anti-foreign interference regulations that was passed by the previous Taiwan government. And there's also the issue that the defense and foreign affairs budget could face severe cut by this opposition-dominant Congress. So that, we do see that as part of the reactions, the civil society rose up to protest. Some of them still remain in the outside of the LOI. If you went to the legislative Yuan last night, you could see a significant number of the protesters still stationed there. So that was that is the issue about the domestic front, how the government and the legislative yuan they're facing against each other. And then about the future direction of the Taiwan-China relations, not only we see the raising tension against Taiwan, we also expect that China will intensify other pressure, whether that's from disinformation, domestic political interference, the military gray zone operation against Taiwan. And I think yesterday afternoon, there is a new tactic by China announced by the Taiwan Affairs Office regarding the Chinese new law against the Taiwan civilians. So that is a very new development. Right now, the China started to act as if the Taiwanese people, Chinese citizens, is under Chinese jurisdictions, and they try to pass the laws to criminalize some of the activity, especially when they regard the activity as the Taiwan independence. And according to the legislations, some of the activity can be punishable to death. And then, of course, people will wonder how China will be able to implement those legislations. Of course, if you are not in China, probably you won't be able to face direct punishment. But we have to remember that China already established over 100 of the overseas police stations. And also the Chinese, they do, through their cooperation, especially with global South countries, for countries that have the extrajudicial extradition and treaty with China, there's a possibility for the Taiwanese citizens, should they have been criminalized by China, and believing that those people already committed a kind of Taiwan independence criminals, then should those people travel to some of the country that have the jurisdiction, that have the extradition treaty with China, those people could be sent back to China, should those countries cooperate with Chinese demands. And not to mention about the possibility of the red notice in the Interpols, and we do know that during the year 2017 and 18, when Chinese bureaucrats, they control the Interpols, they do send out, they do use the Interpol for them to go after the Chinese dissidents overseas. So that was the something that we cannot do light of. Facing the Chinese harassment, I think the harassment is not just about Taiwan, but also towards Japan and Philippines. Just the day before, I think this week, and probably a lot of people will also saw that how China violently reacting to the Philippine boats trying to supply their people stationed and among others in that abandoned ship in a certain rocks. And also just our Korean colleagues talk about their government in argue that the Korean the government positions actually in terms of security improved in U.S., Japan, and Korea cooperations. And also the new development is that the U.S., Japan, Australia, and Philippines, the so-called Squad is about to be formed. That in addition to the Quad and the AUKUS, We do see that right now the development in the Indo-Pacific security architectures, as mentioned by the Secretary of Defense Austin in his Shangri-La speech. In his Shangri-La speech, he did mention that the the traditional U.S. hot and spoke system right now is already under the transformations into something that's different. And according to Jake Sullivan and the U.S. National Security Advisors, talked about this about like a year ago. It actually means that some kind of lattice world system is about to emerge. So that this is the issues. But of course, in terms of ASEAN, the talk of the day is still hedged against both China and the United States. So that when we talk about all those network systems, probably with the exception of Philippines, and possible that Singapore will be the willing partner to be in that system, the rest of the ASEAN would stand on the sideline. And we do know that 2 years ago, the war in Ukraine connects geopolitically of the two ends in the Euro-Asian continent. And right now we do see that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, they started to form a closer knit of the new geopolitical alliance. And especially as we saw that the Russians pushed its visit to North Korea just this week. And the new closer relationship between Russia and North Korea as well as Iran. The development about the denuclearization of North Korea, the possibility definitely not more remote. And for Taiwan, there's a new worry regarding how the Russia and China would work together on the issue of Taiwan, including the possible war in Taiwan, how Russia's role could be. And that's something that Taiwan security operators never considered in the past, but right now we then consider the Russian factors. And so basically, and there's also another thing that is for some other countries like India and Vietnam, for example, their relationship with Russia is part of their the tactic to constrain regarding the issue of China. But now, with the Russia-China study to emerge the work more closely together, that also actually presents a kind of a security challenge for both India and Vietnam. And that how that's will go, that is something that we need to watch more closely. And then basically, I'll say that the democracy versus authoritarian, the geopolitical competition, the new Cold War is actually coming, irrespective of how some people they continue to deny that the possibility is there. And in this new geopolitical construct, Taiwan is a frontline state. So for Taiwan, probably the position is very different from the Southeast Asia and probably some other country, that there's no room for Taiwan to be on the hedging. And the possible war in Taiwan, that was talked on the day. But we have to know that because of new geopolitical development, the war in Taiwan is no longer the operate on the so-called Taiwan being independent or the unifications. So the traditional independent versus unification divide is not going to drive the so-called war in Taiwan. It's actually Chinese perception about how the Taiwan being a part of the U.S. security system and how the China-U.S. competition, that will drive the Chinese calculus. And to a certain extent, that's a reality for Taiwan, but that's something we have to cope with. So we do know that the estimate, and also due to the Taiwan's own importance in the technology and economy, the calculus is that the war in Taiwan probably cost the world more than $2 trillion to $10 trillion. And about this figure, I think you have to just place the $2 trillion in the that's in the category about the Asian financial crisis in the year 2008. That the whole year we are talking about the war on Taiwan for about a week. That cost is equivalent to the Asian financial crisis, not Asian financial crisis, but the financial tsunami in the year 2008. That year, the whole accumulation of it. So that is too significant, and $10 trillion will be much more. So basically, I'll say that whether there's a piece of war across the Taiwan Straits, is in a very unstable stabilities because it is totally in its own mind. There's no other the construct that could be in the play. But of course, what we could act and to cope with the situation is to let the CME recognize that today is not a day. The cost will be outweigh the benefit, and so he should choose something to choose smart enough and not to choose the war to complete its aim. So the conclusion is that the election result indicate that Taiwan will clearly stand with the legal democracy, and especially like the United States, Japan, Australia, EU, and etc. And in Taiwan, we do have a split government that presents challenge for the administrations. And the third thing is that the Taiwan's security dynamics is now dominated by China's concern about its competition vis-a-vis the United States, less about whether Taiwan will be independent or not. And of course, China also changed the definition of independence by not accepting unification with under the PRC as independence. So that is another new thing that we need to know. And the Chinese diplomatic pressure will be dramatically intensified, and the cross-strait tension definitely increase. About the diplomatic pressure on Taiwan, I think that in the next 3 or 4 years, the China want to take up all the Taiwan diplomatic allies. That could be the thing that Taiwan needs to watch to be very watchful. And also the diplomatic pressure could also manifest itself in the personnel area. That means that the Taiwan passport, would that to be deregularized through the Chinese pressure when China tries to apply that regulation to the rest of the whole world. Of course, the country like the United States, a stronger democracy in the European Union, as well as the United Kingdom, Australia, probably they will not proceed with Chinese demand. But the country that could be under the pressure by China and could be working with China will be many of these global South countries. And we do take a very serious look at the recent statement by Malaysia when they have a leadership statement with China. Onward, they talk about how Taiwan is already part of China and how the Malaysia opposed Taiwan independence. So those are the things that we are watching and signaling something that we cannot just ignore. And finally, I'll say that although the Taiwan is operating in this geopolitical context, but the reality about a new Cold War to descend on the Indo-Pacific is something that is already here. So I just end up here and thank you very much.
好，谢谢李兄兄。谢谢四位，或者是单纯分享自己国家选举的结果，或者是分析选举的因跟果，那也大致都预估了选举结果跟地缘政治之间会怎么样的互动。这些的确都是本场次规划的议题。不过本场次也希望能够有另外一个议题，就是说媒体在选举中的角色。这一个部分大概除了韩国的李先生，因为他有很多媒体具体的作为，怎么影响选举作为的势力，那已经跟我们分享了。那赖先生因为他不是新闻业者，所以我们不敢要求他提供这方面的见解。那其他两位大概都没什么提哈。那实力大赏他提了这个日本一向不止于政府的国防军事政策这个是一个长远结构的倾向。不过也少听到这个具体的势力怎么影响这次日本的选举。同样，印尼部分到底是怎么样？这一部分我不晓得两位是不是有什么可以跟我们分享的心得或者观察？因为我们想新闻记者反观自己的行业的作用，这个基本上是很有专业意义的。那我们这个基金会基本上的核心宗旨，基本是在新闻专业这一部分。这一部分这个部分，不晓得两位有没有什么可以再跟我们分享？有吗？
Thank you very much, Mr. Lin. Yeah, media's influence in the Japanese politics is very huge, and I think I'd like to say something about how the government controls the media to make the stories or contents in the direction of the favorable to the government policy and the politicians in the government. Actually, you know that we have in Japan a very sort of notorious media system which is called the press club system. And that is the, in the major departments or the major agencies of the government in the building, there are press clubs. And only the representatives of the reporters of the major traditional media, they had seats. They have the seats in the room. They have the right to go into the room. And that room was mostly located just next to the minister's office. So if you have the right to be the member of the press club, such as the Foreign Ministry of Japan, you can watch, whatever actions or activities the foreign minister does today or will do tomorrow. So that is a good benefit for the media, because one of the role of the media is always watching the powerful people. And in covering the foreign policy, the foreign minister is the most or second most powerful person in Japan. But on the other hand, the journalists work so long, so sometimes they come to the press club around 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they will stay there up to the deadline or the morning edition. That is mostly most of the Japan paper. It's like 1 o'clock in the hour in the morning, 1 hour after midnight. So continuous lives, daily lives like that from 8 o'clock to the 12 midnight. That means that you would become kind of the crush official of the government or agency or department or ministry. So you have the similar thinking of what Japan foreign policy should be, or what the reaction of the foreign countries should make to the Japan's foreign policy. That is sort of as I said, that this is we have the press club has a merit, but the demerit is like the journalists maybe in a longer stay in the press club, you would lose the most important mission of the journalism is that always criticize the government policy, and that is a huge demerit. And in the case of how to manipulate the media, the government used the press club. Among the press club members, like 12 or 20 people from the various social media, they would choose favorable, the easy to handle journalists and others, and they would invite only that persons familiar to them to the lunch or some dinner or some secret briefing, and then they would leak some of the news from the ministry. So this kind of the differentiating the media first. The press club members from the other people, especially the foreign media people, foreign correspondents, and the new media people who are not traditional media. And secondly, among the members of the press club, they would treat differently. So this is the way of how to handle the media by the government, and that is that is the sort of the way to handle the media in the time of election. NDP or other major parties have their own, own their private polling, public polling, and they have the very accurate numbers of that, how many seats the NDP would take in the next election, or opposition party take the next election. And they exchange that numbers with the traditional media's public polling. We also do the polling. So we have the numbers. And they exchange those numbers with the government numbers, our numbers, and you get sort of the accurate outcome or accurate outcome of the numbers the outcome of the election. So that's another way for the government to handle the media. That's the government side. And how the media make the influence on public opinion is that I don't think there's any well thought, well theoried rule how to make influence among the people's mind. We will have the Tokyo governor's election in July 7th. So actually 10 days later, we have the big election for the governor of Tokyo. And there are two big candidates. First one is incumbent Miss Koike Yuriko. She is very popular, and she's from the conservative background. And the other one is Miss Ren Ho. And I think she's ordinarily her parents. One of her parents is from Taiwan. Yeah, maybe I may wrong, maybe wrong, but she has some roots in Taiwan. So this is an interesting competition between the one from the conservative, the other one, Renfo, is from the liberal side. So, but after the both of the candidates announced their intention to run for the governorship, I mean, most of the traditional media not clearly support the Koike, the conservative one, but they report something nearly side of the Miss Ren, the liberal candidate. So that shows that again that the Japanese people are very conservative, and the Japanese people like to see the continuation of the policy of the Tokyo, which is to elect the incumbent Ms. Koike. So I think this is this is a chicken and egg question. Japanese, whether the Japanese general public is conservative, that's why the media is writing some good stories about the incumbent conservative politician. Or media is leading the public opinion to their own favorite direction. That's a question which I don't know the answer. And that is the case of the Japanese media's reporting that coming election of the Tokyo. And I think they have an impact. And my prediction that Ms. Koike will win.
Yeah. If I may add just a brief info on Indonesia's media influence over public opinion in the last election. I think I kind of implied that when I kind of compare what the media has been publishing about the wrongdoings, the scandals, about the social assistance outpouring before the election, that was an outright violation of the neutral position an incumbent should take place in Indonesia's tradition in the last few elections. Despite of that publication, the public still vote for Prabowo, still vote for this preferred candidate. So I think that shows the diminishing power of the mainstream media in shaping the public opinion in Indonesia, especially for the election. But if you ask me what is the cause of that declining influence, I think partly it's because Indonesia's media is not yet able to really navigate the digital landscape that disrupt the business, the media industry in the last 10 to 15 years. Many Indonesian media rely on digital platforms to reach their audience. So the distribution of news really rely on Google, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter or X now. So we don't really have, the majority of the media in Indonesia don't really have its own first-party database. They don't have a strong sense of who their audience is. So without that, it is very dependent on platforms. So we don't know what kind of algorithm the platform is using and whether our news really reach the right segment that can really make an impact on the voters' decision in election. So I think that is a big disadvantage that was partly the media own mistake for letting the distribution part of the industry goes to the platform, goes to the third party in their production cycle. So newsroom only produce news. They don't really distribute the news anymore. And I think that is a very significant factor why we are not as influential as it was in Indonesia's media landscape. Thank you.
谢谢两位的补充哈。我刚才听 Sugita 上讲说，日本的政府他利用这个新闻记者俱乐部的时候，他很容易控制媒体。那我在想，全世界的政府大概都想做同样的事情，控制说法大概就差不多。那台湾这个世代，最近这一段时间的台湾的记者，比较一个不好的现象就是，政府为什么他就吃什么，人家为什么，不止政府，就是人家为什么他就吃什么东西，大概有这个倾向。不过台湾有一个特殊的，就是台湾的媒体基本上好像有一些党派倾向，所以不同党派的媒体底下的记者，那没有让简单，你政府丢给他东什么东西，他就吃什么东西。那我不晓得这种现象在日本或者在韩国或者在印尼这些国家有没有类似的倾向？这个请教三位，看三位哪位有兴趣跟我分享一下。谢谢。这先来啊。
For effort discussion, I hope to receive the interpretation help.
我们请这个央广的白道美小姐来帮忙中韩语文之间的逐步口译哦。这个白道美她过去是中央社驻韩记者，所以她这一部分可以帮我们。
한국의 상황도 일본과 다르지 않다고 생각을 합니다. 한국의 언론 카르텔과 권력과의 카르텔도 상당히 심각한 상황이기 때문에 한국의 미디어 파워가 권력과 매우 밀착되어 있다라고 생각을 합니다.
我认为韩国跟日本其实是很相像的。当然，那个日本方面有特别有提出来，就是像比如说这个政府方面想说怎么样控制媒体，然后去喂它很多东西。那其实韩国方面也是一样的，它能够就是彼此之间，它为了自己的一些利益，然后双方就是垄断一些东西。说韩国状况也很类似。
한국에도 진보적 정당이 있고 보수적 정당이 있는데 그와 맞물리는 진보 매체가 있고 보수 매체가 있습니다. 그 두 성향이 같기 때문에 점점 가까워지고 그러면 그 언론과 권력이 기득권화가 되는 거죠. 그것을 깨지 못하고 있는 것은 한국만의 상황은 아니라고 생각합니다.
韩国方面的话，如果我们以政党来讲的话，它有进步派以及保守派。那但是就说他们的媒体也是一样，是有比较倾向于它是支持进步跟支持保守派这样子。因此呢，不管你是什么样的政府，就说它是如果是说这个媒体是原先就是要支持哪一派的话，大概这个要很难去动摇。也就是说，你现在是如果是进步派进步派在做执政，或者说保守派在执政的话，那这个你本来支持的这个媒体呢，你就变成是一个你现在既有的比较有当权的，跟他们比较亲密的这样的关系。
선거를 할 때마다 1당과 2당 진보 정당과 보수 정당 간의 싸움이 있고 그 정당을 대변하듯이 진보 매체와 보수 매체가 마치 그 정당의 대변인이 된 것처럼 기사로 또 논평으로 싸우곤 합니다. 그리고 그들은 정부의 고위직으로 언론인들이 영전하기도 합니다.
只要有选举的时候啊，就是因为他们媒体也是那个两极化，也就是说他是支持进步派或者是保守派。当然他政党之间或者说这个政治的选举当中，他们彼此之间一定会双方在打，但是就是说媒体之间也在打，就是互打，他们他自己变成自己就自动就变成这个政党的一个发言人一样，或者是他为他去辩护什么一样，他就自动变这样。等到这个政党如果他执政的话，他就变成一个可能会变成政府的一个高层的，可能某个位置就能够给他。
끝으로 정치가 포퓰리즘화 되면서 언론 환경도 포퓰리즘에 결탁하는 그런 양상이 보이고 기사를 쓰는 기자들도 독자나 시청자의 취향에 맞춰서 쓰다 보니까 점점 보수화돼가는 경향이 있습니다. 그것을 타파하는 것이 지금 한국에서의 언론인들의 과제라고 생각합니다. 마치겠습니다.
其实就是韩国的政治也慢慢有那个民粹的那种倾向，就是民粹主义的倾向。那也就其实也影响到这个媒体也有民粹的这个倾向。这个也可以这样子说，因为他媒体因为他要看读者或者是说他的这个观众或听众的这种脸色，他想要去迎合他们的口味，所以他们也在改变，所以他们也成了一个民粹的。那因此呢，这个越来越比较倾向于不是改革的这一方面，进步的这方面，而是比较保守的这种方面。所以认为是说韩国的这个媒体啊，一定要打破这样子的问题，也就是说你不要去迎合人家的口味，然后去这个民粹化自己，这才是一个进步的比较重要的一个点。到此为止，谢谢。
谢谢白小姐。两位。 Sugita, go first.
The question is media and political party orientation, and it's of course, as I said, that in the Japan case, it's maybe the different from other countries because we have, as I said, the big party, which is Liberal Democratic Party, that is the center-right party. And that has taken the power almost 75 years since the end of the World War II. So in this political situation, all of the traditional media have to play a role of the criticizing the government. So that being they categorized as the progressive or liberal media, and only the small right-wing faction papers support whatever the government does, as because the similar. They have the similar ideas with the government. That kind of the media is not popular in Japan. People have some frustration with the government policy, and because that people would like to read something written negative way of the government policy in the media. So that's the general description of the media. But in the traditional media or in the digital media, most of them are critical of the government. And there are slight differences, of course. Some media are much more closer to the LDP, and the others are much more aloof, away from the LDP. So, in the sense that we are in a media, we don't see that much big differences of like this media is always supportive of the LDP, and that media is always supportive of the opposition party. That's the general sketch of the picture of the media and the political parties.
谢谢史立长。
I think it's similar in Indonesia's situation. It's pretty common for government officials, for big political parties to try to build this special relationship with journalists, with prominent editors, to have regular meetings where there's off-the-record sessions where leaks usually will be openly explained, but with the promise that the information can be published without attributing that particular official. I think that's pretty common in many democracies where freedom of the press is upheld. But the situation in Indonesia is a bit complicated because then usually the information was distributed with a kind of informal agreement that the information should be published in a way that will not harm the source. In some cases, the governments or the one who leak the information wants to be portrayed positively in that story afterwards. And to make sure that happens, usually there is a business deal that happens with the publication. So that is the ugly side, I guess, from this kind of relationship. So, for instance, if Tempo, my publication, published a damaging story about one ministry because we have received information about some scandal happening in that ministry, then our business deal, our advertising contract with that ministry will be freeze for a few months, sometime for a year, until the minister is no longer angry with us. So usually that happens. And so we need to always maintain this balance, try to keep our business contract with these ministries, because the government is still the biggest spender for advertising in Indonesian media. But at the same time, we have to also serve the public and publish all the important information for the public. So I think that's the dilemma, and many outlets try to balance that by increasing readers' revenue, subscription, and that's what our strategy, our business model is trying to balance advertising revenue with readers' revenue with subscription. So we are not too dependent on advertising money from the government that will eventually have negative impact on our independence.
道歉的事情要有执行长道歉。
谢谢各位的补充那我刚才听这个李先生，韩国的李吉秀先生的报告，觉得李先生他似乎对韩国执政党输掉选举以后， 改以这个亲美亲日的外交路线来转移他内政的失策的这个手法，基本上他不以为然。那斯基大长跟这个宜中兄的报告里头也提到，可以知道说日本跟台湾的执政党都以亲美为上策。那Wahyu则指出，这个印尼想在中美之间的角力，希望能够谨慎的选这个立场，总是要谋求印尼的最大利益。我在想，四位对本国的观察一定都有见地，那愿不愿意对话一下，切磋一下说你彼此之间的观察，到底是同个路数，还是这里头互相会有一些出入或者冲突的地方？不晓得四位有没有哪一位有兴趣来先跟我们分享一下你的一些不以为然，或者是完全同意的地方？没有。
Maybe I can start the discussion on this. Well, if I were to ask how do I, as a journalist, observe Indonesia's position in this geopolitical tension, I think it is very opportunistic position from Indonesia, try to keep this balancing act, because I don't think it is sustainable in longer term. It might be strategic in this time around, but when the conflict or the competition reaches to a certain point, I think it is important for Indonesia to display what is the value of the country, what is the principles that the country stands for, and then take position based on that value. And I think it is in the last two big conflicts in the last few years, the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the Gaza war between Israel and Palestine, Indonesia took two different approaches. In the Ukrainian-Russia war, Indonesia still try to keep the balancing act. Indonesia's President Joko Widodo visited both Ukraine and Russia in one visit. So he met with President Zelensky and then flew to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin at one visit, to show that Indonesia still try to be a neutral mediator and try to provide any kind of assistance for both parties, for both countries. In the Palestine-Israel conflict, it is more difficult to maintain that kind of balance, and I think that eventually will have to be the decision taken by Indonesia, because in the Israel-Palestine, Indonesia strongly support the Palestine side and strongly condemn the atrocities conducted by Israel. Based on the Islamist value, because Indonesia is the largest Islam country, Muslim country in the world. So I think the difference in Indonesia's position in those two conflicts shows the dilemma faced by Indonesian leadership. It is impossible to be balanced in a certain conflict.
还有人吗？是，哎，有吗？
Thank you. I still think that the U.S. is the most important factor in the Japanese politics in the past and now and in the future. The first reason is because of the rise of China and somewhat their own reasons. China is emerging as the threat to Japan, and Japan is under constitution, we don't have the full-fledged military. So we are allied with the United States. So that's why and of course China is the biggest trade partner for Japan. So but we are in a dilemma of which side we should take. But now it's become clear that security is much more important for Japan, and economic commercial interest could be replaced. China could be replaced with other countries or other markets, hopefully. And one thing I'd like to add is that because the core values of the United States is, I think the Japanese people are very important. Because we have, as I said, that we have the memory of the dictatorship and authoritarian regime in the past. So the democracy or freedom or human rights or free press, those principles are very, very important. And in comparison, when you compare the Chinese system with the U.S., of course the U.S. has many shortcomings, but in overall picture, U.S. system is far better than China. So that's why with this kind of new geopolitical situation, Japan is inclined to be closer, get much more closer to the United States. But I understand that many countries have their own national interests, and they have their own merits and demerits considered thoroughly, and they have decided their policies.
那韩国李先生好像认为说，这个不能一味的亲美亲日，可能需要调整立场，在这个整个东亚的危险四步的这样一个局势之下，是不是这个样子？
한국은 중국과 북한이 있긴 하지만 맞닿아 있는 지정학적 위치가 있고요. 하지만 안보 상황은 미국에 의존을 할 수밖에 없는 현실이 있습니다.
韩国如果是以它的这个地理位置，或者是说我们从地缘政治来讲的话，它跟中国跟北韩是其实是它根本就是连在一起的，因此它有很大的威胁感。所以它在有关安全方面呢，它绝对是会依赖美国的。
또 북한이 수시로 멀리스틱 미사일을 쏘고 그것이 일본 열도 위로 지나가는 이런 현실이 자주 발생하고 있기 때문에 일본과도 가까이 군사적 또 경제적 연대를 할 수밖에 없는 현실이 또 있습니다.
然后呢，就是北韩它时不时就来导弹，也就是说它在这个丢一些弹出来，那这样子的话。 不只是对这个整个区域，尤其是像日本呢，日本整个列岛，它也是会飞到它的那个试验的那种那个弹道飞弹呢，它也会飞到那个日本的上空。因此呢，就是韩国其实是它势必要跟日本有更亲密的合作。
하지만 한국 사람들의 여론도 한국 정부의 그 정책 결정을 단순하게 이렇게 단순화해서 말하기는 어렵습니다.
在韩国的那种舆论来看的话，就是说把韩国目前政府所推出的那种政策，我们没办法用很单纯的方式说它是不是接受。
일본과는 이웃이지만 일본과는 과거사 문제가 한국 사람들은 아직 해결되지 않았다라고 생각을 하고 있고요. 그런 면에서의 갈등은 여전히 있고 정부가 일본과 가까워지면 한국 사람들은 그런 일본과 가까워진 정부를 지지하지 않는 경향이 또 있습니다.
韩国跟日本之间的这个关系非常 非常的复杂一点，因为就是现在是跟日本有比较这个可能要再亲密一点的那种关系，他们想要更拉近这个关系，但是呢，他绝对又忘不了这个过去的这个历史，因此呢，在这个历史上的问题没有解决之前，他们之间的那种内心的那种瓜葛跟冲突是还是存在的。所以假如是现在韩国政府它的表现出来是跟日本政府很亲密的时候，它其实是民众对政府的支持度是降低的。
아까 그 한국의 선거 결과를 말씀드렸지만 의회를 장악한 압도적으로 장악한 일당은 미국도 중요하지만 중국과의 관계, 또 러시아와의 그 유대적 관계가 매우 중요하다고 여기는 정당입니다.
刚刚在演讲的时候也有跟大家分享过，就是说在韩国的国会的选举结果呀，这个选举它其实是压倒性的胜利，它是在野党压倒性的胜利。那这个在野党他们所主张的那种对外关系的话，我们不能只依赖美国，就是因为安全的关系只依赖美国，而是说我们要对中跟对俄也要有就是有等距的那种关系，我们应该还是要恢复比较好的关系。
하지만 현재 정부는 한국 정부는 미국과 일본과의 유착이 점점 강화되고 있고 그런 방향으로 가겠다고 천명을 했기 때문에 앞으로의 한국의 지정학적 위치에서의 정책은 상당히 혼란을 겪을 것으로 생각이 됩니다. 의회의 도움을 받기 어렵기 때문이죠.
现在的政府呢，不管这个是不是国会，它是不是败选，它目前所发表的所有的政策，其实是它跟美国、跟日本的这种关系是越来越亲密，就是可能有史以来最亲密的这样子，越来越要强化，而且他认为这个政策方向目前所发表的就是这样子。所以呢，我们在这个地缘政治方面，它的政策这个。 地缘政治方面的这个政策来讲的话，其实对整个韩国来讲是一种某种的混乱。为什么要混乱呢？因为国会里面很难去政府很难得到国会的支持，因为国会要完全要亲美的话，大概国会方面没有办法支持政府的这个政策。
그래서 한 말씀 더 드리면 한국 정부가 아까 말씀드린 대로 5년 단임제로 대통령을 뽑기 때문에 5년 동안 친미, 친일 행정을 하다가 또 5년 후에는 친중, 친러로 바뀌는 상황이 한국은 반복되고 있기 때문에 앞으로 미래에서 그런 현상에서 형평성을 한국이 어떻게 유지할지는 예측하기 어렵다라는 말씀을 드리고 마무리하겠습니다.
众所周知啊，韩国的这个总统他只能够任期只有一次5年，因此呢，韩国就有一个这样子的现象，就是因为政党轮替这个当中呢，现在的目前的政府是亲美亲日，那可能下一届的政府是亲中亲日亲俄，然后再下一次可能又是亲美亲日等等，他就一直在反复，他一直在变来变去，就是说他的政策没办法这个持续的，所以呢，我们要去探讨一下韩国的未来的这个政策会如何，韩国要怎么样，很难去预测的，就是目前所看到的韩国的政策。谢谢。
好，谢谢。刚才我提问的其实是我个人的好奇，都是我个人的问题。其实我们现在时间是应该开放给基委员在场各位，看有没有人有问题。这个，因为我们效率没有很好，我们保留10分钟给各位看有没有问题。没有，我们当然随时可以准时出吃便当，那个大家最高兴。来，请这个要提问的人，请你先扼要自我介绍。 那发言这个越短越好，然后你若有想要哪个人答复，麻烦你明示。
My name is Liang from Taiwan Public Television Service. I'm the news reporter for the global news, and I have a question for Mr. Lee. The question is, we know that from the February, the Korean doctor have strike until now, and because of the President announced a new policy for the medical students, and just before the election. So as we see the media of the Korean media, they always or usually focus on the patient's rights, but the non-Korean media, they focus on the labor's rights. So what's different from this, and how the Korean media deal with these issues, and is that the reason, one of the factors that influence the election that the Green Party lost in the parliament? Thank you.
You can find it.
好，不好意思，我想说那个我问题就一次问完哈，因为刚刚跟李忠先生其实都还没有请他回复一些问题。那我觉得比较关心的是说，对，刚刚其实主席有问到，就是说在美国跟中国之间的这个每个国家基于他自己的利益采取立场。那当然，从台湾政府的角度来讲，这个在民主联盟的这一边，对台湾的安全相对是比较有利。可是另外一个部分是说，当然台湾内部也有认同分歧的问题嘛，所以其实所谓的反美论跟以美论，其实中国在国际社会其实是在强打反美论了。那反美论其实对于台湾内部有非常大的影响。所以我想这边我可不可以去请问一下李教授，或者说他怎么样看待反美论对于台湾跟美国以及民主联盟的这样的一个合作的立场，会不管是在我们的内政跟两岸关系上面，会不会造成什么样的改变？谢谢。
谢谢。那在场还有没有哪位朋友有问题？我们收集完以后再一口气来回答。请。
喂，听得到吗？好，my name is Jason Chayadi. I'm from National Taiwan University. I'm the bachelor in physics department, and I'm also a member of Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle, the nationalist party that Mr. Wahyu has mentioned. I want to ask to Mr. Wahyu about Indonesia's new bill, the RUU Penyiaran, the bill of broadcasting. What did you hear from behind the door, and how do you respond? How do media respond? How do the journalists respond to this bill? And then what move have you made according to this bill? And then what movement related to the parties? Because this bill is related to the political parties in the legislative. So what move did you take related to the parties? And then what effects can it give to a broader journalism field and lesson that people can learn from this event? And then how can journalism, specifically in Indonesia's situation where the media is not that strong, keep the global peace and prosperity? That's my question. Thank you.
现场还有吗？如果没有啦，我们就刚才有3个问题，就照那个3个问题的先后的次序，先请李先生。
질문해주셔서 감사합니다.
谢谢你的提问。
아까 말씀드린 것처럼 한국의 현 정부는 어떤 극단적인 태세를 취하는 정책을 많이 하고 있습니다.
正如我刚刚也有稍微提到，是说我们现在的目前的这个 执政政府啊，它其实是它在政策上是比较极端的。
의대생 정원을 그러니까 쿼터를 늘리는 문제는 어떤 대학 로스쿨 입학생을 늘리는 문제와는 차원이 다른 문제입니다.
比如说这次就是有讲到是说那个跟医师发工这个有关哈，其实那个问题的来源就是那个新的政策，就是说它要增加大概每年要2000多还是多少的那个医学院的学生，那这个数字的这个增加跟之前我们讲 low school， 也就是你这个非法医学可以的那种 low school 的那种学生要增加的状况是非常不一样的。
훌륭한 의사를 길러내는 것은 이 강의실에 100명이 들어와서 수업을 듣던 환경을 의자를 100개 더 놓고 200명을 듣게 하는 거랑은 전혀 다른 문제입니다.
因为我们常常讲是说我们要培养一位优秀的这个医护人员、优秀的这个医生啊，我们不能把它当作是就说我们现在教室里面有100张椅子，然后就是让100个学生进来，跟我们再增加100张椅子让200个学生进来是不太一样的。
그래서 의사가 늘어나고 의료 서비스의 접근성이 높아지면 국민들에게는 당연히 도움이 되지만 그 방식이 어렵기 때문에 항상 매번 정부가 의사를 늘리고자 했지만 실패했던 것입니다.
其实我们会想是说，我们要把那个医护人员增加这个到更大的数量的话，的确是可能会对我们的这种医疗服务方面是一个优点，而且是应该是更好的。但是实际上并没有目前所看来，它如果有增加的话，它对它的帮助并不是很大，它的方式也并没有它的方式也是并没有想象那么的容易，因此到现在还是没有实现的。
그런데 현재 정부가 몇 달 전에 한국에서 내년도 의대 입시생을 2,000명을 갑자기 늘리겠다라고 일방적으로 발표를 했고 그것에 대해서 교육 여건을 들어서 단계적으로 하자라고 주장하는 의사와 의대생들에 대해서 강한 수사를 벌이고 있습니다.
但是呢，就是政府在几个月以前，它就所推出的这个新的它的政策，就是说从明年度开始，明年的学年度开始，每年都要增加2000个医学院学生的名额。那就是说，它这样子的增加这个名额，其实对这个医学院或者说这种整个医护的这种这个环境来讲的话，他们认为他们的教育方面没有准备好，他们没有这样子的条件可以让他们进来，因此。 这个医界方面，他们所提出来的是希望是能够就是有一点像是逐步的，就是按部就班慢慢来，而不是一下子就增加2000个人。但是就是说他们去反对的时候，政府是有查水表的，就是他去调查这些医生啊，然后还有医学系的学生。
그래서 한국의 의대 교수들과 의대 학생들 그리고 인턴 레지던트 의사들이 여러 가지 제안을 했지만 대화는 정부와의 대화가 결렬이 됐고 그들이 파업을 선언을 하게 된 겁니다. 물론 필수 의료, 아기를 낳거나 이런 것은 진행이 되지만요.
因此呢，就是说，其实我们大家看到新闻的时候是他们已经在抗议的时候，其实是那之前已经有在做协调，但是那个协调其实破裂，他们是破局的，因为为什么？就是韩国的这个医学院的教授跟学生们。 还有就是那个医院的那个住院医师啊，他们是一起有去提案，是说要这个阶段性的实施，而不是一下子实施。但是因为政府不接受这样子，所以他们破局之后，他们就开始这个大罢工。但是他们大罢工并没有是全部来，也就是说我们必要的，比如说要生小孩，那怎么办？那这样的医生还是留在那边的。
그래서 표면적으로 보이는 것은 환자들이 당연히 불편을 겪게 됐고 또 환자들이 의사들보다 숫자가 훨씬 많기 때문에 환자들의 목소리가 클 수밖에 없습니다. 그거에 대해서 초반에는 기계적으로 언론들이 많이 그들의 불편에 대해서 보도를 했습니다.
刚刚我们 记者有提到是说，那个韩国为什么你就只听到那个我们的那个生病的那些人，或者是我们的病人的那种权益，你都没有提到那个医护人员的提议，就是这方面的他的回答是这样的，就是说，因为我们从表象来看的话，你这个病人他所感受到的那种不方便是很明显的。那再来，我们也可以知道。医生跟病人之间的那个数量，我们的对比来看的话，绝对是病患的数目比医生多，所以他们的生意绝对比他大。所以大概就是很快的、比较容易的去吸收的是，就是说媒体它大概报道的这个也是比较多的那个声浪的部分。
이번 선거를 앞두고 벌어진 상황이고 지금도 진행이 되고 있기 때문에 이런 현상이 집권당의 선거 패배에 일정 영향을 미친 것은 부정할 수는 없습니다. 하지만 의료 파업이 곧 패배로 이어졌다라고 보기보다는 이런 여러 가지 극단적이고 갑작스러운 정책이 시민들에게 혼란을 야기한 것이 집권당의 패배로 연결됐다 이렇게 보는 게 맞을 것 같고요. 초반에는 환자들에 대한 의견이 많이 보도가 됐지만 지금은 시간이 가면서 의대의 구조, 또 의사 양성에 대한 여러 가지 또 간호사들의 부담 이런 구조적인 문제에 대해서 보도가 많이 나오고 있어서 초반처럼 그 환자들의 목소리만 다루지는 않고 있다는 말씀을 드리겠습니다.
所以就是刚刚也有提到是说这个会不会有影响到那个韩国的国会选举？那如果是说这个韩国的国会选举跟这个医护人员的他们的罢工是否有关？其实他这个罢工还在进行当中，就是国会选举结束还在进行当中，因此呢，他在这个医护人员的这个罢工多多少少一定会有影响，但是它绝对不是直接的影响，因为所以他就败或什么，这是没办法这样子说。但是有一个非常重要的一点是，就是说他们为什么有一些人就是他可能就反对，或者说这边的反而是这个医生的这边的声浪会比较高的原因，是因为目前的政府它是比较极端性的，他想要做什么就自己很快，也就是说他没有给你很多的时间去做讨论，它是一个很及时的那种感觉，所以呢，就说很多人会觉得说你的这个政策是怎么来的，觉得感觉有一点乱，有一点混乱，所以呢，就是人民对他的这种反对的那种声音也会大，所以国会应该他的这个执政党的败选应该是跟这个有关系，因为人民觉得说你的东西是比较不合理的。那另外还有像之前一开始的时候没有说，大家都在讲我们现在病患多么的不方便，你们都不顾人家的人权等等。但是就说那是开始的时候，可是现在如果看韩国的媒体的话，这是对于医护人员的这方面的支持，或者说这方面的报道是更多。所以说，它整个这个媒体的那种感觉也有改变。
再来是李宗兄。
Yeah, about the question about U.S. skepticism, definitely that is something of a security concern. But I would say that sometimes a healthy skepticism is important in shaping the debate for a informed discussion regarding the Taiwan-U.S. relation and U.S. security strategy across the Indo-Pacific. But the U.S. skepticism right now, and that's raging in Taiwan, the problem is that it did not really touch upon why the skepticism about the United States, where it came from. Also, many of the information that it touched upon is about the false information regarding the United States military postures, its policies. Even some of it is just direct taken from the Chinese disinformation as part of the U.S. skepticism. And the result is that it's not just about the Taiwan-U.S. relation will be complicated, but also it ends up to the federalism within Taiwan and the demoralization about Taiwan society. And that is the most detrimental effect about this issue that is currently going on. So basically what we think is that in order to cope with this, not just about to counter the Chinese disinformations, because many of the U.S. skepticism, the narrative actually came from China, but also the U.S. needs to do something to be more transparent and to be more clearly determined in terms of its commitment toward Taiwan. So in this regard, the strategic ambiguity that as a part of policies, I think that's already run its own courses. That policy itself needs to be blended in favor of something else. I do not actually ask for the strategic clarity because we should avoid using those big words. So that will be the part of the response to that questions. And finally, I just add up to some of the earlier discussion regarding how the U.S.-China that being perceived by the regional states. I think if you look at both Korea, Japan, Taiwan, including Philippines, the four first island chain states, the U.S. presence and the U.S. cooperation is essential for their own security. There's no doubt about that. The U.S. is actually the ally for both Korea and for Korea, Japan, and the Philippines, and essential partner for Taiwan. But the issue is that just between the U.S. and China, how about the cooperation between the four first island chain states? How about the Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and Philippine cooperation? Would that be something that needs to be done in order to be the real hedge? Should some uncertainty in the United States and the problem in China start to come out, would that be able to help us to build up a stronger fences to ride out the uncertainty in both the United States and China? And I think that is the issue that needs to be explored more. Thank you.
Thank you. The question that was directed to me related to the broadcasting law, the proposed bill on broadcasting. So it was initiated a few months ago by the Indonesian Parliament. And one of the clauses were quite controversial because it will prohibit exclusive investigative stories being broadcasted on broadcasting platforms. When it was first leaked, it was met with huge protest and outcry from the press council, our press council, journalists association, and publishers. But I think the real, it's basically killed the bill. So there's no more talk about the bill today. So it's a good thing. But the question was what really happened behind the curtain, what really happened, what really triggered the discussion. I think the bill was leaked exactly for this purpose. They want to kill the bill. Because the real reason for this revised law is to regulate YouTube. So it was initiated by broadcasting companies and the Broadcasting Commission because they want to start regulating the OTT, the video platforms. And then because the initial draft was exactly about that, leveling playing field between traditional legacy broadcasting, all the TV stations that are suffering financially because of the digital disruption, and start regulating content on YouTube. On OTT, on video platforms. So that's the real reason. But as you know, Indonesian democracy is quite messy. Someone inserted that very controversial clause, and that became the highlight. And everyone was talking about this one particular clause. Oh, they want to kill investigative journalism. And then basically that's what people are focusing on, and then it's gone. The bill is gone. So guess who is really behind it? But I think this also shows an interesting feature in Indonesian politics. Becoming viral is a good thing if you want to get justice in Indonesia. We now know something called viral justice. So cases, criminal cases, you need to make it viral on social media, then the police will take action. If it's not viral, there is no justice. It is something that is deplorable in one way, but it's also an opportunity. Because public opinion on social media is really being, the government, law enforcement really have high attention. They really look and observe these trends on social. And that exactly related to the previous topic on what will happen if a conflict, if a war erupted in Taiwan. How Indonesia will respond. It really depends on the public opinion. And if there is no positive public opinion about Taiwan, about the values that we have to stand for, then the Indonesian government will also base their policy on that, on the public opinion.
谢谢各位，预报部耽误了一点时间，跟各位致歉。不过我们今天第一场圆满结束，谢谢。
好，谢谢主持人及4位的那个理财贵宾哈。那主办单位在此有一个致歉的事项哈，就是我们今天的那个会议手册有部分的错误。那就请大家中午在领取便当的时候，将您手上的手册先交回给我们的同仁。那我们同仁做一些调整之后，下午第一个场次的时候会发放新版给大家。那如果您在您的手册上面已经有做笔记的，那就请在您的那个手册的封面上写上您的大名。那我们会归还原版给大家。谢谢。